right, welcome back. Danger Ranger Podcast, episode 2. I'm your host, Zach Allred. So I'll get right into it today. So this weekend I went out for the first time to downtown Savannah in about a month or so. Just went out with some buddies who were still in the Army. Ran into one of my old friends, Chris and I were privates together growing up in 1st Battalion. He showed up about 4 or 5 months after I did, so we, basically the same time. And he's an animal, just absolute party animal. Had been from even before the Army, and we ran into each other downtown and got a couple drinks together. And he was talking about his kid, and I was like, man, it's crazy you got a kid, man. That's so cool. One of the funny things is after getting out and still staying in the Savannah, like I run into a lot of my old buddies or like acquaintances that I know that I ran into in the Ranger compound, and it's always funny how they react because I look incredibly different with my long hair and the beard. Like people usually have to do a double take, and I'll go up to people and be like, "Yo, what's up, man?" and like dap them up and stuff, and then it takes them a few seconds to recognize me, which I think is just hilarious every single time that it happens. As of recording this on Tuesday afternoon, and it will be released this evening, my little range video that I posted on Saturday has kind of taken off, that YouTube algorithm. I've only got, about 100 subscribers right now, and I've got about, I think it was like 3.2K views on the range video, which is cool. The challenge has been going well. I talked last week about the challenge I'm giving myself for September of shooting and editing and releasing a video of some sort every day in September. And so far I haven't missed a day, knock on wood. And it's been really fun. I used to shoot video back when I was in middle school, and even before that I would grab my dad's, I think we had I don't know the type of video camera we had, one of those old film cameras, and I had a couple of tapes that were my own to do stuff with, and I would make like stop motion movies with Legos and enlist my brothers into acting for me. And my cousins were really big into the movie, home movie, like, acting and editing and making movies as kids, and we'd shoot a lot with them. There's some classics that we recorded together. Just terrible kids acting and pretty decent effects, considering that we were all preteen and early teenage yeared. My cousin Cody is an absolute animal when it comes to visual effects. As soon as he got his first computer, he started editing and figuring things out in After Effects and Adobe Premiere and whatnot. So I kind of thought that was cool and got into it myself, and it's been fun doing this challenge because I've rediscovered my love and how much I enjoy kind of shooting video and creating stuff. So it's been fun, and I would encourage anyone, if they have any kind of interest in making content, it's not hard to do. I'm just filming this on my Android right now. Eventually going to upgrade to an iPhone before I get any hate comments. You can't argue that the iPhone quality or the iPhone camera quality is better than Android. So I will be eventually moving over to the Apple suite of computers and phones within the next couple months here, I think. So yeah, just try it. Just give it a shot. You don't need much. You just need your phone and maybe a tripod to do this kind of content, to where you're not having to have someone hold it or prop it up against stuff. Having a little bit of lighting helps. I just got a cheap ring light off of Amazon, and that's really all you need. So give it a shot if it's something that you want to do. To kind of talking back to that video, there was a dude that asked me in the comments. Don't know if he's a subscriber or not, but I'll make sure to mention him. He was asking about, because I had just so recently gotten out of Ranger Regiment, was asking specifically about the transition from Daniel Defense upper receivers to the Geissele URGIs, and I think this is something I can talk about without bringing the wrath of I don't know who comes after people who break, leak secrets and stuff, but I'm not too worried about this. This is all open source material with stuff that the regiment's put out. Like, you can tell that we're using a URGI, so I don't feel bad at all talking about it. So for the majority of my time in regiment, I had my personal rifle in regiment was a Block 2, just annual defense. I preferred the Elcan. Like, I got started on the Elcan, specifically the Elcan Spectre DR 1-4. It's a great optic. People don't like it in regiment because, for a couple of reasons. One of them is it's pretty heavy. It's, I want to say, close to a pound in weight, which is a lot when you're talking about weapon accessories. Even though it is, back towards like the main bulk of the weapon, it is a heavier optic. That being said, it is also a very durable optic. I don't think that I ever broke any of my Spectres that I had on my guns, and I ran one from the time I was a private until all the way through saw gunner. We have Elcans on our saws, or tend to prefer Elcans on our saws. I know some guys like to do the EOTech and magnifier combo, but Elcan is just bomb proof. Like, you can't. It's hard to kill. There are a couple failure points, but it's pretty rare that those will fail. So, yeah, Downtown Defense Mark II, or correction, Block 2 upper with an Elcan, LA5, and then we had Insight tack lights. And I usually would run like the Magpul, just a short little Magpul stubby grip, out towards the front, gangster grip, we like to call them. And they don't really teach you in regiment and in the shooting courses you'll take there to, like, I don't think anyone's taught to like grip it like how you would think to grip a vertical grip. It's more, I'm used it more of as a hand stop and kind of an impromptu bipod on occasion. Like, if there was, a situation where I could like rest it stably on something. It wasn't very often. That wasn't the main purpose, but I primarily used my gangster grip as a hand stop. And then I had a Magpul buttstock on it, just one of the ones with the QD mounts. And I don't even know what kind of sling I had, but it worked. The arms room, usually like the arms room slings are pretty trash. And I think that I got lucky and actually had a Magpul sling for the majority of my time, which I prefer Magpul slings. I know people don't really like them. I liked it because the adjustment with the rubber ruggedized slider just worked really well for me. I'm not looking and fumbling around for like a little tab with 550 hanging off of it like a lot of the guys have on their guns. I really like the Magpul sling tab, so that's what I ran. And then switching over to the URGI, or the Geissele uppers happened. It was like right before my 2021 deployment, like towards the end of 2020 is when we got them. And right away there were a few issues. Like, I had buddies in the arms room who showed me ones that, like, the straight from the factory, like these hadn't been touched by Ranger yet, because we do have a tendency to break things, and we would know if it was Ranger that broke it. But these were like straight out the box, and some of them were, the rails were like misaligned with the barrel, which isn't, I don't think it's that big of a deal. It wasn't that big of a deal, but it's just like the quality control was kind of iffy coming straight out of the box. I built one out for my 2021 deployment. I moved away from the Block 2. At that point, I was a team leader. I was like, I'm gonna give this a shot. I know I have a M-lock on all my guns, so like I knew the mounting system. It's not hard to figure out. And I moved away from the Block 2 and built myself a Geissele upper. And on this one, I decided to go the lightweight route because the upper is already, super lightweight. So it's like, all right, threw a Aimpoint T2 on it, and then with a EOTech 3x, and then the LA23, and still an Insight tack light because we hadn't gotten the Surefires yet. I think that they have Surefire Scouts now. Don't quote me on that. But still rocking the Insight. There's nothing really wrong with those. I'm not sure the exact model. I'm sure that there's some cloners out there who know those tannized Insight weapon lights. Pretty good. I mean, I didn't really have any issues with them. I didn't really like the bezel. The bezel was kind of hard to manipulate with gloves on, like on some of them. Some weapon lights specifically the insights, weren't too bad for manipulation, but for whatever reason, the one that I always had on mine was just really hard to manipulate and to figure out which setting you were on without either looking at it with light or, like coming off your gun entirely, and to figure out which setting you were on. So, and I shot a decent amount with that Geissele upper on my 2021 deployment. I was in a place where we had access to range and ammo. Basically, whenever we wanted to go shoot, we could go shoot, which was awesome. I took that thing out to 400 meters. Maybe it was 5. Yeah, we had a 500 meter, 800 meter actually range, but we had berms going all the way back to 500 meters, and accuracy out to 5 with a T2 I was actually able to make hits on man-sized steel targets, like the E-type silhouettes, not IP6, but like the larger kind of fuller-bodied silhouettes. I had to have a spotter to kind of like call my rounds for me at that distance, but at like 4 and in, like it was pretty easy to tell. I really enjoyed the URGIs myself for the short time that I used one, and might look into building out one myself for my personal collection. Both the DD and the Geissele were 14.5-inch barrels. I never got to use the 10.5. I didn't really see a need to. They're kind of coveted within the Ranger Regiment because they're cool and no one likes carrying around a freaking musket. And for our mission set, like, it kind of makes sense, but I just kind of have always felt more comfortable with a longer barrel because it is easier to hit things at distance with. And while we kind of train a lot for CQB and like close in 100, 200 meters, I like having the capability to shoot further if I needed. So that's why I didn't really ever fight to get a 10.5 or really care to have one. They're cool, but if your job is, primarily a shooter, like you should probably roll with a 14.5 or a 16-inch barrel. The people that you'd usually run the 10.5s were like the goose gunner, who has a freaking goose and like that's his primary weapon, and like the weapons squad leader, just running up and down on the berms, making sure his guys are good. He's not really ever using that, so like it makes sense for him to have one. And then platoon sergeant as well. Platoon sergeant's not really directly in the fight. If he is, he's in the stack with the squad and clearing rooms. So at that point, it's kind of okay. At least, again, this is all my experience from what I've seen. This isn't like doctrine or anything. This is purely opinion and my own anecdotal observations. So, don't take my opinions too seriously. We're just talking gear because I like gear and people want to know about this kind of stuff. Comparatively, so we'll talk lasers real quick. The LA-23, there's, I'm sure, NGAL is another name. Next Generation Aiming Laser, I think, is the acronym. So I use that, and I really actually did enjoy that significantly more over the LA5, even though the LA5 is what I grew up on. It's super easy to manipulate and use. Like, it wasn't hard learning the LA-23, like the nitty-gritties of that laser, and it was just so much brighter. Even like they're both unrestricted lasers, and the LA-23 is just so much brighter on the high setting compared to the PEC-15, the LA-5, that it was really nice. A couple gripes about it though, which aren't really that big of a deal long term. And I got 3. So the pressure switch is proprietary, which means that it's a lot harder to get if you misplace it or break it when you're overseas. Like, we would bring an armor, we wouldn't bring an armor. Someone in the platoon was assigned like an armor position when we deploy, and they would assign out extras of, weapon systems and rifles in case, something broke on deployment. We wouldn't have to worry about like finding an actual armor overseas to fix it. So the pressure point, or the pressure pad rather, is a kind of point of failure on those, that it's an early, making the switch to a new accessory or new optic or a new weapon system. There's going to be growing pains associated. So that was it's a smaller problem. The proprietary pressure pads, The next problem that I personally didn't really like is the adjustment screws on the LA23 are super small. You really have to have like a Gerber with a tiny little flathead to adjust them. You can't. I'm sure guys are out there that are familiar with the LA5 and the PEC15. You can adjust the zero on your laser with like the rim of a cartridge. Super easy to do. You don't need a specialized tool. You can do it with a bullet. With the LA23, you have to have like an actual tool on hand to do. Again, not that big of a deal. You're not going to be zeroing your laser every single day, so not that big of a deal. The last one that I think is probably the largest complaint, at least for me, was the size of the pressure pad on like the actual laser unit itself. Was about half the size of the LA5. It was much shrunk down, which, I get it. It's a smaller laser, and so like the pressure pad is going to be smaller. But it's harder to find in the dark, with a glove on than the LA5 or the PEC15 pressure pad. Yeah, I think that about covers it for the gear talk for this week. To wrap this podcast up, I'm gonna tell a story about the best sandwich that I've ever eaten in my entire life. It's been over 12 years now since I've had this sandwich, and the memory of it is still lingering. I can still taste it. It was so good. So I'll set the stage. It was about 2009. I had just turned 12 back in December of 2008, and I had just moved from Cub Scouts to Boy Scouts. I was living in California at the time, specifically like the Fresno Central Valley area, and we were planning, our scout troop was planning our first camp out of the year, and it was to be my first camp out as a 12-year-old. Super excited. Our leaders, I'm not going to say their last name, but I remember their first name, Eric and Aaron. Two really awesome dudes. I know Eric was a firefighter still at that point. I know that he is still a firefighter today. And then I don't know exactly what Aaron did, but Eric, they were both, big, awesome dudes, actual men. And we planned just a one night overnighter up by Shaver Lake. People in California will know it's like a little bit north of Fresno, Central Valley area still. I don't know in relation to Yosemite where it is, but anyways, I digress. So there was still a significant amount of snow on the ground in the mountains of California at February. And we knew this, and we planned for it going into it, and it was supposed to be just a quick, overnight trip. Nothing too bad. Wasn't slated to snow or anything. Weather looked good besides being cold. And so we went up, and this was, like I said, the first real camping trip that I'd been on outside of family trips with my parents. So it was cool, getting to go away from the brothers and my parents for a weekend with my buddies. I want to say that it was myself, the two leaders, Eric and Aaron, my buddy Jackson, my buddy Wesley, and I want to say my other friend McLean was there as well. He might not have been. My memory fails me. I know for sure that Jackson was there. He was my tent buddy for that night. Anyways, so we get up there, and not too bad. The leaders had to dig about 5 feet down to get to dirt to start a fire. I don't know if that's like the kosher way of doing fire in the snow or like the fastest way, but that's what they decided to do was dig a pit and build a fire so we could warm our tinfoil dinners up. And if you don't know what a tinfoil dinner is, it's just this little pre-made kind of thing that you can just slap in the fire and warm up. And the intent is for it to be mostly already cooked. And mostly cooked, and so it's super easy to warm up and eat. I think that my parents had, from what I remember, had sent me with uncooked potatoes in this one. Like, they cooked the meat, but I don't think that they cooked the potatoes in this. So we passed it off. I wasn't able to stand near the fire because I had asthma at the time. So like it was basically like standing in a chimney with this pit that we dug. So we passed off of our tinfoil dinners to the leaders, then cooked them up and ate them. Sun went down pretty quick, and Jackson and I had set up my dad's tent. Now this tent was not a 4-season tent. It was a 3-season tent. And I learned this, kind of after the fact. And like, as I learned more about camping and gear, this was not a tent rated for snow. It had also been in use for probably over 10 years at this point. It was an old tent. The coating was not the best, like the waterproofing and what have you. And I don't think that we brought a tarp either. So we set up, and I brought a mummy bag, and I think that I had a thin, just, about a 1/4-inch sleeping pad. Didn't sleep the whole night, basically. Didn't sleep the whole night, and I wasn't also able to eat most of my tinfoil dinner because it was mostly raw potatoes. So I picked the meat out of it. So I was starving. And this is, again, my first camp out. So I didn't, really know that I could bring my own snacks and whatnot. And Jackson didn't have any snacks either. So we both just kind of stayed awake the whole night, shivering in our tent and just waiting for the sun to come up so we could go home and leave. And the next morning, I don't think that we cooked anything. I think we decided not even mess with a fire. And we pretty much packed up and walked the half-mile back through the snow. I think we sledded a little bit, but I think everyone had not slept through the night and was all just miserable and cold. So we left pretty quick the next day, and we got back to the truck, and I was starving. I was so dang hungry, and I think I was driving with Eric, and he brought sandwich stuff, for the way out. And I remember him making me and Jackson these killer ham and cheese sandwiches with mayo on white bread. Super, super plain, not even any mustard, just mayo, cheese, and a little bit of ham on some, Wonder Bread. And I think I got 2 of them, and those were delicious. Just after not eating pretty much and shivering all night, burning a bunch of calories, I was starving and voracious. And to this day, just the memory of driving down the mountain in a warm truck eating those sandwiches is just primo. There will never be a sandwich that I can make that will ever top that sandwich that I had that day in February. And kind of the takeaway from this, or the lesson that I kind of took from it, was this was the first real challenge that sticks out in my mind when I look back and kind of think back about when did I start actually doing difficult things. And this wasn't even that hard, compared to the stuff I've done now, but just it was the first test, if you will, of myself that I can think of. And then in the coming years in Scouts, there would be some more, which I might tell stories of later on. But yeah, just really fond memories of that sandwich and shivering my ass off in the snow with my buddies. And yeah, I think that's all for today. I'm gonna end this. Yeah, so that's all for today. Gonna close this out. Appreciate y'all. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And I'll catch you next time. Have a good one.